Hi, my name is Nicole, and I'm going to try to teach you ancient Greek, even though I've only taken 1/4 of it. So the first thing I wanted to show you is just the textbook that I use in my class. It's from Alpha to Omega by Groton. And honestly, it's a pretty good textbook. I can't really complain too much. She explains everything very simplistically, and if I ever didn't really understand something, it was usually just because I wasn't reading right. I just wasn't really paying attention, probably because I was just staying up until 3 in the morning freaking out because I didn't really know what the hell was going on with this language. But it eventually gets easier, which is nice, and then it gets harder, and then it gets slightly easier, but then harder for much longer periods of times until you just think you're going crazy. But eventually I know it's just gonna be easy and I'll finally get the hang of it. It's just difficult now. So I'm actually going to show you a screen cap from Anne Groton's textbook where she's showing the alphabet, and it's actually not that difficult to learn, especially if you speak Spanish or English or something like that, where it has romanticized alphabet. The only difficult things is that they don't have certain letters, like with H. The only way you can tell there's an H is if there's like a rough breathing accent, but that'll be covered later. So now I'm just going to quickly go run down the whole alphabet. I'm just going to say what they're called just really quickly so you can just hear what each of them are. Just give you a really quick rundown, and then I'll go over how each is pronounced and everything else a little later. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, and omega. So right when I got to sigma, I actually went ahead and paused because there's going to be 2 lowercase letters for sigma. You see those just based on what letters they're going to be surrounded by, and that's what dictates which one is being used. So something Groton actually shows on the side of the alphabet in the textbook is actually how you want to pronounce these, and I'm just going to say right now, how you pronounce stuff does not really matter in the short term. You want to focus on that later once you are becoming familiar with the words and you're getting used to the alphabet and translating and transliterating. However, I'm only saying this when you're going to be reading the passages. Just don't pay attention to it that much. What you're going to want to pay attention to in terms of pronunciation is just the letters themselves. You don't want to focus on the accents for now because that's going to tell you what pitch you want to have. Instead, just focus on remembering the rough breathings and the missing letters, that are just absent, that the rough breathings are going to go ahead and show you. So as I mentioned before, a rough breathing is transliterated as H. A rough breathing is just gonna look like a little apostrophe kind of right before a letter usually, and if it starts with an A, you'll know it's gonna sound like ha instead of ah. When you're gonna be looking at kappa, it's either gonna be transliterated as either K or C, and then for chai, it's either gonna be k or ch. When looking at the beginning of a word, rho is going to be transliterated as r, and then otherwise as r. As for upsilon, it's going to be transliterated as u if it follows a vowel, so it's going to mean it's going to be the second letter in a diphthong, and then y if it follows a consonant. And this seems kind of daunting and confusing at first, but once you see what the words we're going to be looking at are, it's going to start to make a lot more sense. Honestly, a lot of this language just really comes down to context and figuring out what things are going to be based on what seems most likely, and sometimes that's the case for words, but it's especially the case for sentences since they don't really have a arrangement like we do in romanticized languages. The next thing I'm going to be bringing up is this exercise from Groton's book, and it's from chapter 1. It's just Greek god and goddesses names. And I want to say one thing that's important to realize is that when you're transliterating, and I put emphasis on transliterating, you're not gonna immediately recognize what you're reading because it's gonna be the direct translation from Greek letters to English letters. So you might not immediately recognize what the word is gonna be. And you're gonna see that a lot when you're doing translations with full sentences and paragraphs alike. It's gonna seem really difficult at first, but what you just need to focus on is transliterating everything correctly, making sure every Greek letter is correctly transliterated into an English letter, so you're actually seeing how it would be spelled, even though it might not be the direct translation. So I'm gonna give you guys like a moment or two to just write these all down, see if you guys can transliterate them and get what each Greek god and goddess is, and then afterwards I'm gonna show you what all the answers are and what all the transliterations should be. So the first one is going to be Poseidon, but when you're saying it with the Greek accent and how the letters should be pronounced, it's going to be Poseidon. And if you see that little tilde over the omega, that's a circumflex, which is basically just telling you that you should be going up and down in pitch when you're saying that letter. Number 2 is Aphrodite, but they would pronounce it Aphrodite. 3 is Hephaistos. And if you look a little closer to what looks like our letter for H, which is actually the eta capitalized, you're gonna see that there's 2 different accent marks. One of them is a rough breathing, and the other is a grave. And that's gonna tell you the pitch, and then also that you should have that huh sound, that rough huh. For number 4, it's gonna be Thukydides, and pay attention to the little bar over the E. It's E because it's eta, not E, which would be epsilon. And then for 5, we have Achilleus, which is Achilles. And then 6 is Troia. And then for 7, it's gonna be Baucis. 8 is gonna be Xerxes, which we would know as Xerxes if you've ever watched 300. For number 9, it's going to be Cyclops. You would think it's Cyclops because that's what we really know it as, but it's pronounced as Cyclops in ancient Greek. Number 10 is Rhea. 11 is going to be Dirke. 12 is going to be Homeros. And if you see, it doesn't start with an H, but by that rough breathing, we know that there's going to be an H before that O. And this is gonna be Socrates, one that most people probably know as Socrates. And then for 14 we have Musa. And then 15 is Zeus. 16 is gonna be Agamemnon. 17 is Okeanos. 18 is gonna be Pheidias. 19 is Leucippus. 20 is Hydes. 21 is Oedipus. 22 is Eleutheria. And if you've read Plato, this is going to sound familiar. It's Glaucon. And lastly, 24 is going to be Charybdis.